The Emperor's Vigil. The Danube moves like molten silver in the dying light, carrying with it the whispers of empires, the dreams of those who built along its banks, and the quiet doubts of those who must defend what others have created. You know this feeling, don't you? That moment when the day's urgency finally stills, when the last email is sent and the phone lies silent beside you, yet your mind refuses the peace your body craves. Tonight, as you settle into this quiet hour, I want to take you to another riverbank, another time, where someone much like you wrestled with the weight of responsibility when the world had grown dark around the edges. It is the year 170 of the Common Era. The great river that divides civilization from the unknown stretches before us, its waters catching the last amber threads of sunlight. Along these banks, where Germanic tribes have crossed and recrossed for generations, where trade routes once hummed with prosperity, now stands the machinery of war. Roman standards flutter in the evening breeze, their eagles casting long shadows across hastily built fortifications. But this is not a story of battles, though battles rage nearby. This is a story of what happens when the sun sets and the public mask can finally be set aside, when even emperors must face the questions that come in the quiet hours. The Roman camp settles into its evening rhythm with the practiced efficiency of men who have done this 1,000 times before. Cooking fires bloom like scattered stars across the temporary city of canvas and timber. The sound of hammering dies away as the last tent stakes are driven home. Sentries take their positions along the perimeter, their armor catching glints of firelight as they pace their appointed routes. In the distance, beyond the ordered rows of the camp, the wilderness presses close. Dark forests that stretch for days in every direction. Rivers that lead to places no Roman has ever mapped. And somewhere in that darkness, the tribes gather and plan and wait for their moment. But here, within the circle of Roman discipline, there is warmth and light, and the comforting sounds of civilization maintaining itself against the void. The quartermaster checks his supplies one final time. The camp prefect makes his rounds, ensuring every detail is as it should be. The soldiers clean their equipment, write letters home, share stories around their fires. And in the largest tent at the center of it all, a single oil lamp burns steady and bright. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, master of the known world, sits alone with his thoughts and a piece of parchment. The weight of the purple cloak has been set aside for the night. The ceremonial armor rests on its stand, polished bronze reflecting the lamplight. Here, in this small circle of golden illumination, the most powerful man in the world looks remarkably ordinary. His hair, once dark, now shows the silver that comes to those who carry great burdens. His face bears the lines that appear when every decision affects millions of lives. His hands, moving slowly across the parchment, are the hands of someone who has learned that power and peace are often strangers to each other. He pauses in his writing, the stylus hovering above the page. Outside, a nightbird calls across the water. The sound is lonely and wild, a reminder of all the things that exist beyond the reach of laws and legions and imperial decrees. What does an emperor write about when the day is done and the courtiers have withdrawn? What thoughts demand attention when the public performance of power finally ends? Marcus dips his stylus again and continues. The words that flow onto the parchment are not dispatches to the Senate or orders to his generals. They are conversations with himself, reminders and reflections, and attempts to find meaning in the endless complexity of leading others. The universe is change, he writes, the familiar words taking shape under his careful hand. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Simple words, perhaps, but spoken by a man whose thoughts must encompass grain shipments from Egypt and tax revolts in Gaul, barbarian incursions and senatorial ambitions, the loyalty of distant legions, and the health of an empire that spans from Britain to the Euphrates. You understand this burden, don't you? The way responsibility expands to fill every available moment of consciousness. How the weight you carry seems to grow heavier in the quiet hours, when there are no meetings to attend or crises to manage, when you're left alone with the magnitude of what you're building and all the ways it might fail. Marcus sets down his stylus and walks to the tent opening. The night air carries the scent of wood smoke and horses, of the great river flowing past in the darkness. His guards stand at respectful attention, but he barely notices them. His gaze is drawn across the water, toward the forests where his enemies wait and plan. The Marcomannic Wars, the historians will call this conflict, a name that makes it sound neat and contained, like something that could be filed away in the archives and forgotten. But for those living through it, it feels less like a war and more like the slow unraveling of everything they thought was permanent. For generations, the tribes beyond the Danube had been content to trade with Rome, to accept Roman gold in exchange for their cooperation. The frontier had been stable, prosperous even. Roman merchants crossed the river to buy amber and furs. Germanic chieftains sent their sons to be educated in Roman schools. It had seemed like the natural order of things. But natural orders have a way of revealing their fragility when the pressure becomes too great. Climate change in the far north had set the tribes in motion, pushing them against Rome's borders with the inexorable force of a rising tide. What had once been negotiable differences had hardened into existential conflicts. And so Marcus finds himself here, hundreds of miles from the marble halls of the capital, trying to hold together the largest empire the world has ever known, while barbarians test the strength of every mile of frontier. He thinks of his adoptive father, Antoninus Pius, who had ruled for 23 years without leaving Italy. A peaceful reign, they called it. A golden age. But golden ages, Marcus has learned, are often built on foundations that the next generation must defend with blood and sleepless nights. The irony is not lost on him. He had been trained as a philosopher, drawn to the teachings of the Stoics with their emphasis on virtue and wisdom and the examined life. He had imagined spending his reign in contemplation and study, perhaps writing treatises on ethics or the nature of justice. Instead, he finds himself learning philosophy in the most practical way possible, discovering what it actually means to accept what cannot be changed while working to change what can be influenced. Testing the Stoic teaching that we cannot control external events, only our responses to them, against the daily reality of governing an empire under siege. A messenger arrives, his horse's hooves drumming against the packed earth of the camp. Marcus watches as the man dismounts and hurries toward the command tent, no doubt carrying news from some distant corner of the frontier. More problems to solve, more decisions to make, more weight to add to the burden he already carries. But for now, in this brief interval before duty calls again, he allows himself this moment of quiet reflection. The camp settles deeper into its nighttime rhythm. The cooking fires burn lower. The conversations around them grow softer, more intimate. Marcus returns to his writing table, to the parchment that waits for his thoughts. These private meditations, these conversations with himself, have become his anchor in the storm of imperial responsibility. Here, at least, he can speak honestly about the challenges he faces and the principles that guide him through them. Very little is needed to make a happy life, he writes, the words flowing more easily now. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The lamp flickers slightly in a draught, casting dancing shadows on the tent walls. Outside, the Danube continues its ancient journey toward the sea, carrying with it the hopes and fears of all who live along its banks. And in this small circle of light, surrounded by the vast darkness of an uncertain world, one man continues his quiet struggle to find wisdom in the midst of chaos. This is where our story begins, not with the clash of armies or the drama of great events, but with the simple, profound challenge of maintaining one's humanity when the weight of the world rests on your shoulders. Tomorrow will bring fresh challenges, new crises that demand immediate attention. But tonight there is time for reflection, for the kind of deep thinking that only comes when the urgent finally gives way to the important. And perhaps in the quiet wisdom of this distant emperor, you might find something that speaks to your own midnight wrestlings with responsibility and purpose. The watch and the whispers. The emperor's tent grows quiet behind us, but the camp itself never truly sleeps. As Marcus Aurelius sets down his stylus and contemplates the weight of empire, other souls move through the darkness. Men who carry their own burdens, their own fears, their own hopes for tomorrow. These are the ordinary guardians of an extraordinary moment in history. And their stories, whispered between the watchfires, speak to something eternal about the human condition. Listen, do you hear it? The soft crunch of hobnailed sandals on frost-hardened earth, the gentle clink of mail against bronze fittings, the measured pace of men who know that vigilance is the price of survival. Along the camp's perimeter, the night watch begins its ancient ritual. These soldiers, they're not so different from you, really. They carry responsibility that keeps them awake when others sleep. They've learned to find comfort in routine, in the familiar rhythm of duty that provides structure when everything else feels uncertain. Gaius Maximus adjusts his cloak against the river wind and peers into the Germanic darkness beyond the ramparts. 23 years old, a veteran of 3 campaigns, he's learned that the night holds more than shadows. It holds possibility and threat in equal measure. Quiet tonight, he murmurs to his companion, Marcus Flavius, a newer recruit whose beard still grows in patches. Too quiet, comes the reply. My grandfather used to say the Germans move like ghosts when they want to. But it's not just the enemy they're watching for. It's the thousand small things that can unravel an army. Deserters slipping away in the darkness, supply wagons that should have arrived by now, the first signs of sickness that could sweep through the ranks faster than any barbarian charge. You know this feeling, don't you? This sense of standing guard against a dozen different futures, most of them uncertain, some of them threatening. The weight of knowing that your vigilance, your attention to detail, might be all that stands between order and chaos. As Gaius walks his section of the wall, he thinks about his farm back in Campania. The olive trees his father planted, the small vineyard that produces just enough wine for the family and perhaps a jar or two to sell at market. Simple things, peaceful things, the kind of life that seems almost impossibly distant from this frozen frontier. But he doesn't regret being here, not exactly. Because someone has to stand watch. Someone has to hold the line between civilization and the vast unknown that stretches beyond the Danube. In the distance, a supply wagon finally creaks into view, its wheels finding the ruts worn by countless others. The driver, hunched against the cold, raises a weary hand in greeting. Behind him, covered by oiled leather, lie the small necessities that keep an army functioning. Grain and oil, bronze fittings and leather strapping, letters from home that mean more than gold to the men who receive them. The wagon master, a grizzled civilian named Lucius, who's been following armies for 30 years, climbs down with the careful movements of a man whose bones remember every pothole between here and Aquincum. Any word from the south? Gaius asks, helping to unload amphorae of oil. Same as always, Lucius replies, but there's something in his voice, a hesitation. Though, there's talk in the towns, people saying the plague's spreading again. Alexandria, maybe Rome itself. The soldiers exchange glances. They've heard these rumors before, carried along the endless chain of supply routes and military posts that connect this distant frontier to the heart of empire. Sometimes the rumors prove false. Sometimes they don't. This is the burden of leadership at any level, isn't it? The constant flow of information, much of it incomplete, some of it contradictory. The need to separate signal from noise, to make decisions based on partial knowledge, while the stakes remain terrifyingly real. Back in the camp's interior, around fires built in carefully dug pits, other conversations unfold. Veterans sharing hard-won wisdom with newer recruits. Stories that serve as both entertainment and education, because in an army, experience is currency, and survival often depends on learning from someone else's mistakes. I remember my first winter on the Rhine, says Centurion Brutus, a scarred man whose left hand is missing 2 fingers. Thought I knew cold, thought I knew what it meant to be far from home. He pauses to sip from a cup of posca, the sour wine and water mixture that serves as the soldier's daily ration. But cold, real cold, it teaches you things about yourself you never knew. Around the fire, younger faces listen intently, not just to the words, but to what lies beneath them. The unspoken knowledge of how to endure, how to find meaning in hardship, how to build something worthwhile even when the circumstances seem designed to break you down. The Germans, continues Brutus, they're not our real enemy. Oh, they'll kill you quick enough if you give them the chance. But the real enemy is despair. It's the voice that whispers in your ear during the 4th hour of watch, telling you this is all meaningless, that nothing you do here matters. He looks around the circle of faces, firelight dancing in his eyes. That voice lies, it always lies, because what we're doing here, it matters to people who will never know our names, matters to children not yet born, to merchants who will travel safe roads, to farmers who will plant their crops without fear. You've heard that voice, haven't you? That whisper of doubt that comes in the small hours when the weight you carry feels impossibly heavy. When the problems seem to multiply faster than solutions. When the gap between what needs to be done and what you can actually accomplish stretches like a chasm before you. But here, around this ancient fire, surrounded by men who understand the burden of responsibility, there's a different wisdom being shared. Not the polished philosophy of the emperor's tent, but the practical wisdom of those who must translate ideals into daily action. My wife, says a young soldier named Quintus, she writes that our son took his first steps last month, walked right to her, laughing like it was the greatest joke in the world. His voice carries both joy and sadness. I'll miss his first words too, probably. Maybe his second winter. The fire crackles, sparks rising into the star-filled darkness. No one offers empty comfort. They all understand the cost of duty, the way responsibility can create distance even from the things we're trying to protect. But Brutus nods slowly. My boy's 15 now, wants to join the legions when he comes of age. He's quiet for a moment. I'll try to talk him out of it, of course. But if he's determined, well, there are worse ways to spend a life than in service to something larger than yourself. The conversation drifts, as conversations around fires tend to do. Someone mentions a letter from a brother who's joined a trading expedition to India. Another talks about a cousin who started a pottery business in Gaul, making simple bowls and cups for the growing towns that spring up wherever Roman roads reach. These are the ripples of empire, aren't they? Not just the grand strategies and military campaigns, but the countless individual decisions to build, to trade, to plant something that will outlast the planter. As the night deepens, the conversations grow quieter, more reflective. Men who spend their days in the disciplined routine of military life allow themselves, in these stolen hours, to wonder about the larger patterns they're part of. Do you think it will last? Asks Quintus. All of this, Rome, the peace, the roads and cities? It's the kind of question that might seem naive in daylight, but darkness has a way of making philosophical inquiry feel natural, necessary even. Brutus considers this, staring into the fire's heart. Nothing lasts forever, he says finally, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. Maybe the point isn't to build something eternal. Maybe it's to build something good, something that makes life better for the people who come after us, even if they eventually build something different on top of what we leave behind. The wisdom in this simple statement settles over the group like a blanket. Here, on the edge of the known world, surrounded by uncertainty and danger, these ordinary men have stumbled onto something profound about the nature of meaningful work. You're building something too, aren't you? Something that might not last forever, but something that matters now, something that creates value, that solves problems, that makes life a little better for the people it touches. The fact that it won't last forever doesn't diminish its importance. It might even enhance it. As the watch changes and new guards take their positions along the ramparts, the conversations fade to murmurs, then to the comfortable silence of shared understanding. These men will rise before dawn, will face another day of uncertainty and challenge. But they'll face it together, bound by something stronger than fear, bound by purpose, by duty, by the quiet knowledge that what they're doing matters. In the distance, the Danube flows on through the darkness, carrying its ancient secrets toward the sea, and along its banks, the watch continues. Patient, vigilant, eternal. The emperor's burden. The emperor's tent stands silent now, save for the soft scratch of stylus against wax tablet. Inside, by the gentle glow of oil lamps, Marcus Aurelius continues his nightly ritual, the one that has sustained him through 17 years of rule, through plague and war, through the endless weight of decisions that shape the lives of millions. His hand moves slowly, deliberately. These words he writes are not for posterity, not for the Senate, not for history. They are for himself. A conversation with his own soul in the darkest hours, when the burden feels too heavy for any mortal man to bear. Remember, he writes, that very little disturbs you. What disturbs you is your judgment on what is happening. The weight you carry tonight. It feels immediate, doesn't it? The decisions waiting on your desk, the people depending on you, the future hanging in the balance. But here, in this tent nearly 2,000 years ago, another leader wrestles with the same fundamental truth. The external pressures are real, but the real battle, the one that matters most, happens in the quiet spaces of your own mind. Marcus sets down his stylus and closes his eyes. Through the leather walls of his tent, he can hear the sounds of the camp settling into its rhythm, the measured footsteps of sentries, the low murmur of men sharing stories around dying fires, the distant challenge and response of guards changing watch. All of it resting on his shoulders. The universe is change, he continues writing. Our life is what our thoughts make it. This is what the histories don't tell you about power. They speak of victories and defeats, of laws passed and enemies conquered, but they rarely capture this. The solitary hours when a leader sits alone with the magnitude of what they've taken on. The moment when you realize that every choice ripples outward, touching lives you'll never know, shaping a future you may never see. In the physician's tent, just 50 yards away, Dr. Satyros tends to the wounded. His hands, steady despite his age, work by lamplight to clean and bind wounds that speak of the day's skirmishes. Each soldier who passes through his care carries a story, a life that Marcus's decisions have directly touched. Young Gaius, barely 18, with a spear wound through his shoulder. He joined the legions to send money home to his mother in Gaul. Now he lies fevered, calling out names in his delirium. The physician works in silence, knowing that tomorrow this boy might march again, or might never see his mother's face. This is the reality that weighs on the emperor's mind as he writes. Every philosophical principle, every stoic ideal must be tested against moments like these. It's one thing to speak of virtue and duty in the marble halls of Rome. It's another to hold those principles steady when your decisions send young men to die in foreign soil. What we do now echoes in eternity, Marcus writes, then pauses. He thinks of his own son, Commodus, safely back in Rome. Will the boy understand, when his time comes, that leadership isn't about the power to command, but about the willingness to carry what others cannot? You know this feeling, don't you? That moment when you realize that what you're building isn't just about you anymore. The people who depend on your vision, your decisions, your ability to see clearly when others are lost in confusion. The weight of it can feel crushing in the small hours of the night. But Marcus has learned something in his years of rule, something that he's trying to capture in these private writings. The weight doesn't get lighter. You get stronger, not through force or willpower, but through acceptance, through understanding your role in something larger than yourself. Accept the things to which fate binds you, he writes, and love the people with whom fate associates you. In the scribe's tent nearby, Lucius Valerius works by candlelight, copying dispatches that will travel back to Rome at dawn. Reports of casualties and supply needs, requests for reinforcements, updates on the Germanic tribes' movements. Each document represents a thread in the vast web of administration that keeps an empire functioning. Lucius has served 3 emperors now. He's seen how power changes men, how the isolation of command can twist even noble intentions. But Marcus is different. The scribe has noticed how the emperor walks among the common soldiers, how he listens to their concerns, how he carries himself not as a god among mortals, but as a man among men who happens to bear a heavier burden. Tonight, as Lucius copies the emperor's latest letter to the Senate, he pauses at one particular passage. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. This is wisdom born not from theory, but from practice. From nights like this one, when the easy path would be to respond to aggression with aggression, to meet cruelty with cruelty. The Germanic tribes have shown no mercy to Roman settlements. They've burned villages, enslaved families, shown no regard for the laws of civilized warfare. Yet Marcus holds to his principles. Victory, yes, but victory achieved through honor. Justice, but justice tempered with mercy. It would be so much easier to simply unleash the full fury of Roman military might to solve problems through overwhelming force. But that's not building something that lasts. That's not creating a legacy worth leaving. In the Roman bathhouse, hastily constructed but serving its purpose, a few officers take advantage of the late hour to wash away the day's grime. The warm water, heated by hypercast fires tended through the night, provides a brief respite from the harsh realities of campaign life. Tribune Maximus, veteran of 20 campaigns, sinks into the warm pool with a sigh. His body bears the scars of a lifetime in service to Rome, but his mind carries something heavier. The memory of orders given and received, of decisions made in the heat of battle, of young men who followed his commands into situations from which they never returned. The emperor writes in his tent again tonight. He mentions to his companion, Centurion Flavius. The meditations, Flavius nods. The men talk about it. They say he's writing down his thoughts, trying to make sense of it all. Aren't we all? Maximus replies quietly. Back in the imperial tent, Marcus continues his nightly dialogue with himself. These writings, they're becoming something more than just personal reflection. They're becoming a map for navigating the impossible terrain of leadership when the stakes are higher than any individual can truly comprehend. You have power over your mind, he writes, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This is the paradox of true leadership, isn't it? The more responsibility you accept, the less control you actually have. You can't control market conditions or competitor actions or global pandemics or supply chain disruptions. You can't control whether people understand your vision or whether they'll follow your lead or whether the risks you're taking will pay off. But you can control your response. You can control the principles you hold to when everything else is uncertain. You can control the person you choose to be when the pressure is at its greatest. Marcus sets down his stylus again and walks to the tent's entrance. Through the gap in the leather flaps, he can see the camp spread out before him. Thousands of men, sleeping fitfully on hard ground, far from their homes and families, trusting in his leadership to see them through another day. The Danube flows past in the darkness, its waters reflecting the stars. Somewhere across that river, Germanic warriors make their own plans, tend their own fires, prepare for their own tomorrow. They too have leaders wrestling with impossible decisions, carrying the hopes and fears of their people. We were born to work together, Marcus thinks, remembering his own words. Even enemies, even in conflict, are part of some larger pattern that he's only beginning to understand. The oil lamps flicker lower now. Dawn is still hours away, but the emperor knows he should try to rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new decisions that could tip the balance between victory and defeat, between the survival of his empire and its slow dissolution. But tonight, in this quiet moment between the day's struggles and tomorrow's uncertainties, he's found something precious. Not answers, but the right questions. Not certainty, but the strength to act with wisdom despite uncertainty. He returns to his writing tablet one final time. Confine yourself to the present. The present moment, not the weight of yesterday's mistakes or tomorrow's fears, but this, right now. The steady breathing, the warm light, the simple act of putting one word after another, one decision after another, one step after another. This is how you carry the weight you carry. Not by becoming stronger than it, but by accepting it as part of something larger than yourself. By understanding that the burden you feel is the price of building something that matters, something that will outlast your own brief moment in time. The Emperor of Rome blows out his lamps and settles onto his simple cot. Outside, the watch continues. Inside, a man who happens to rule the world closes his eyes and prepares to face another day of impossible choices with whatever wisdom he can muster. The Danube flows on through the darkness, carrying its ancient secrets toward the sea. Echoes of home, hours pass in the Roman camp, and the darkness deepens along the Danube. In the quiet spaces between one breath and the next, between one heartbeat and another, memories begin to surface like stars emerging in a clear night sky. The young centurion from Gaul, the one who spoke so earnestly of duty earlier, now sits alone by the dying embers of his fire. In his weathered hands, he holds a small wooden figure, a child's toy carved with more love than skill. His daughter made it for him before he left, her small fingers sticky with honey as she pressed it into his palm. "So you won't forget me, Papa," as if he could forget, as if the sound of her laughter wasn't the first thing he heard each morning when he woke, and the last thing that echoed in his mind before sleep claimed him. You know this feeling, don't you? The way certain memories arrive unbidden in the quiet hours. Perhaps it's the sound of your own child's voice calling your name as you left for yet another early meeting. Perhaps it's the look in your partner's eyes when you promised you'd be home for dinner. Again, the weight you carry includes these small betrayals of presence, these moments when what you're building demands you step away from what you love most. The centurion closes his eyes and lets himself remember. The villa outside Lugdunum, where his wife tends their small vineyard. The way the morning mist clings to the valley floor, and how she looks when she thinks no one is watching. Content in her simple tasks, humming old songs her mother taught her. He can almost smell the bread baking in their stone oven, almost hear the chickens scratching in the yard. But he is here instead, holding a wooden horse carved by 5-year-old hands, watching over men who are themselves homesick and afraid. This is the paradox of leadership: to be strong for others when you feel most vulnerable yourself. To carry not only your own longing, but theirs as well. In another part of the camp, the grizzled Optio, who has served for 23 years, lies on his back, staring up at the vast tapestry of stars. He thinks of his son, now grown, who chose the family farm over military service. They argued about it, harsh words spoken in the heat of disappointment. The boy wanted to work the soil his grandfather's grandfather had worked. The father wanted him to see the world, to make something greater of himself. Now, so far from home, the Optio wonders if perhaps his son was the wiser of the two. There is honor in tending what has been passed down to you. There is courage in choosing the quiet life, the steady rhythm of seasons and harvests, over the uncertain glory of distant campaigns. You understand this tension, this question that haunts the ambitious heart. What if the thing you're building, the empire you're creating, matters less than the simple presence you could offer to those you love? What if the greatest victory is not conquest, but contentment? What if home isn't something you return to, but something you carry within you? The stars offer no easy answers, only their ancient light. The same stars that shine over the Gallic farm where a young man tends his vines and wonders sometimes if his father was right. The same stars that watched over countless generations who faced this same choice between ambition and belonging, between the call of greatness and the whisper of home. Even Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the known world, is not immune to these nocturnal visitations of memory. In his tent, though his lamps are extinguished, sleep does not come easily. Instead, he finds himself thinking of Faustina, his beloved wife, dead these 6 years now. How she would sit in their private garden in the early morning, reading while their children played at her feet. He remembers the weight of her hand in his, the way she would listen to his concerns about governance without trying to solve them for him. She understood that sometimes a man needs not answers, but witness. Someone to see the full measure of what he carries and love him not despite it, but because of it. The grief is still there, sharp as ever, when he allows himself to feel it fully. But tonight it comes mixed with something else. Gratitude for having known such love at all. How many men live and die without ever experiencing that perfect understanding between two souls? How many never know what it means to be truly seen? This, too, is part of the burden of leadership. To continue building, continue choosing, continue carrying the weight, even when the person who made it all worthwhile is gone. To find meaning not in what you've lost, but in what you're still able to give. In the medical tent, the Greek physician, who has seen too much suffering, allows himself to remember why he first chose to heal. There was a plague in his home city when he was barely more than a boy. His younger sister fell ill, and he sat by her bedside for 7 days and nights, helpless to do anything but hold her hand and whisper stories to keep her spirit tethered to the world. She lived. Many others didn't. But in those 7 days, watching life and death wage their eternal battle in the body of someone he loved more than his own breath, he discovered his calling. Not to conquer death, that was always impossible, but to stand with people in their darkest hours and offer whatever comfort knowledge and skill could provide. Now, decades later, he still carries that boy's fierce tenderness. Every soldier he treats is someone's brother, someone's son, someone's beloved. Every life he saves is a small victory against the darkness that would claim us all too soon. You know this feeling, the moment when your work stopped being about you and became about something larger, when what you're building transformed from personal ambition into service. When you realize that the weight you carry isn't burden, but privilege, the chance to matter in the lives of others, to leave the world a little better than you found it. The night deepens, and across the camp, other men wrestle with their own memories. The young soldier from Britannia thinks of fog rolling across the moors of his childhood, of his mother's voice singing him to sleep with ancient Celtic melodies. The Syrian archer remembers the taste of dates and honey cakes, the sound of his grandfather's laughter echoing through their courtyard home. Each memory is a small rebellion against the hardness that war demands. Each tender recollection is proof that beneath the armor and discipline and duty, they remain human, they remain connected to something beyond this moment, this mission, this endless cycle of conflict and resolution. And perhaps that's the deepest wisdom the darkness offers. That home isn't just a place you return to, but a collection of moments that shape who you become. The love you've known travels with you. The lessons learned at your mother's knee echo in the decisions you make in boardrooms and battlefields alike. The values instilled in childhood kitchens and garden conversations become the foundation upon which you build everything that matters. Marcus Aurelius understood this. In his meditations, he would write, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, 'I have to go to work,' as a human being. Not as an emperor, not as a conqueror, but as someone who carries within himself all the love and loss and learning that made him who he is." The centurion finally tucks the wooden horse back into his pack, but not before pressing it once more to his lips. A kiss for his daughter, carried across impossible distances by the power of a father's love. The Optio makes a silent promise to the stars that when this campaign ends, he will write to his son, not to argue or convince, but simply to say he understands now, and he is proud. The physician checks once more on his patients, adjusting blankets and monitoring breathing. Each act of care a prayer offered to the gods of healing and hope. And the Emperor of Rome finally allows his eyes to close, carrying with him the faces of all those he has loved and lost, all those who depend on him, all those who make the weight of the crown bearable. This is what the night teaches, that we are never as alone as we think, that the love we've known doesn't disappear when distance or death intervenes. It becomes part of us, woven into the very fabric of who we are and what we choose to build. The Danube continues its ancient journey toward the sea, carrying with it the dreams and memories of all who have ever stood upon its banks. In its steady flow, there is comfort, the reminder that we are part of something larger than ourselves, something that began long before we arrived and will continue long after we're gone. But while we're here, while we have this brief moment to matter, we carry home within us wherever we go. We build not just for ourselves, but for all those who shaped us, all those who depend on us, all those who will inherit what we leave behind. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, and gradually, one by one, the guardians of Rome find their way towards sleep, the dawn of a new day. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal dance, and gradually, one by one, the guardians of Rome find their way towards sleep. But sleep on the frontier is never deep, never complete. It comes in fragments, brief respites between the weight of responsibility and the pull of dawn. In his tent, Marcus Aurelius sets down his stylus at last. The wax tablet bears fresh marks of his midnight contemplations, thoughts that will one day guide others through their own dark hours. He extinguishes the oil lamp with a gentle breath, and for a moment sits in the darkness listening to the sounds of his army at rest. Even emperors must yield to the body's need for restoration, though the mind continues its restless work beneath the surface of dreams. The sentries change their watch as they have for centuries. Fresh guards take their positions along the ramparts, their eyes adjusting to the pre-dawn gloom. They move with the quiet efficiency of men who understand that vigilance is not a burden, but a gift. The gift of being trusted with something precious. The retiring guards nod their silent thanks and make their way to their bedrolls, knowing that in a few hours the cycle will begin again. But time moves forward, as it always does. The darkness that seemed so complete, so permanent in those small hours before dawn, begins to soften at the edges. It happens gradually, so gradually that at first no one notices. The eastern horizon, barely visible beyond the earthworks and wooden stakes, holds the faintest suggestion of change. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance, perhaps from a village that still stands, still hopes, still carries on the simple business of living, despite the great movements of armies and empires. The sound carries across the morning air, that ancient herald of new beginnings that has awakened humanity since we first learned to cultivate the earth and call a place home. The guards on the eastern wall are the first to see it, that subtle lightening of the sky that speaks of possibility. They've witnessed this transformation countless times, but there's something about dawn that never grows old, never loses its power to stir something deep within the human heart. Perhaps it's the reminder that we've survived another night. Perhaps it's the promise that today might bring the solution we've been seeking. In the officers' quarters, men begin to stir without fully waking. Their bodies, trained by years of campaign life, sense the approaching day even before their minds engage. A centurion opens his eyes and lies still for a moment, gathering his thoughts, preparing for the responsibilities that await. He thinks of the letter he'll write to his wife today, if time permits. He thinks of the young recruits under his command who still look to him for guidance, for the kind of steady presence that makes uncertainty bearable. The camp followers, the merchants, the families, the craftsmen who orbit this military constellation, they too begin their quiet preparations. A blacksmith's wife kindles her cooking fire, the small flames dancing in the growing light. She's followed armies for 20 years, raised children in the shadow of eagles and standards, learned to find home in temporary places. Her hands move with practiced efficiency as she prepares the morning meal, but her eyes drift eastward toward that brightening sky. The light comes slowly, then all at once. The sun, that faithful companion of every human endeavor, lifts itself above the horizon with the same quiet determination it has shown for millions of dawns. Its rays catch the morning mist rising from the Danube, transforming the river into something almost magical. A ribbon of silver and gold threading through the landscape. The transformation of the camp is remarkable to witness. What seemed stark and forbidding in the darkness now reveals itself in softer hues. The wooden palisades catch the early light, their rough surfaces showing the care with which they were constructed. The leather tents, dark and shapeless in the night, now display the warm browns and deep reds of well-maintained equipment. Standards and banners stir gently in the morning breeze, their colors beginning to show true in the strengthening light. A trumpet sounds, not the urgent call of alarm, but the measured notes that mark the beginning of another day. It's a sound that has echoed across centuries of Roman mornings, from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to the shores of the Black Sea. The notes carry both authority and comfort, the reminder that structure and purpose continue, that today's challenges will be met with the same disciplined resolve that has carried the empire through countless trials. Soldiers emerge from their tents with the unhurried movements of men who know their routines by heart. They splash water on their faces from leather basins, run fingers through sleep-tousled hair, begin the daily ritual of preparing themselves for whatever the day might bring. There's something deeply human about these morning moments, the brief transition between the vulnerability of sleep and the armor of duty. A young legionnaire sits on a wooden stool, carefully cleaning his armor with a piece of soft cloth. The leather and metal show the marks of hard use, but also the signs of meticulous care. Each strap is checked, each buckle tested, each piece of equipment given the attention it deserves. This isn't vanity. It's survival, but more than that, it's respect. Respect for the tools that allow him to do his job. Respect for the comrades who depend on him. Respect for the responsibility he's chosen to carry. His movements are meditative, almost ceremonial. Oil worked into leather, dust brushed from metal, straps adjusted and tested. In these quiet morning moments, as the camp comes alive around him, he's not just maintaining equipment, he's preparing himself mentally for whatever challenges await. The familiar routine grounds him, connects him to something larger than his own fears or doubts. An older soldier passes by, pausing to nod approvingly at the young man's work. No words are exchanged, none are needed. The nod carries decades of experience, the accumulated wisdom of countless mornings just like this one. It says, "You understand what matters. You're learning to carry weight properly. You're becoming someone others can depend on." In the medical tent, the physician who worked through the night checking on the wounded finally allows himself a moment of rest. He steps outside and breathes deeply of the morning air, feeling the sun's warmth on his face. His hands, which have grown so skilled at mending what war breaks, are steady as he washes them in a basin of clean water. The simple act of cleansing becomes a ritual of renewal, preparing for whatever healing work the day might require. He looks out across the awakening camp and sees not just soldiers, but human beings carrying invisible burdens. The homesick boy from Gaul who tries so hard to prove himself worthy. The veteran centurion whose knees ache with old wounds but who never complains. The scribe whose careful records will outlive them all. Each person a story, each story a reminder of why the work matters. The cook fires begin to send their smoke spiraling into the morning sky. The smell of bread, baking in portable ovens, mingles with the scent of porridge and the sharp tang of vinegar wine. These are the aromas of sustenance, of community, of the simple human need to nourish one another. Around these fires, men will share not just food but stories, concerns, hopes for the day ahead. Marcus Aurelius emerges from his tent as the sun climbs higher. He's already fully dressed, his purple cloak marking his rank, but his bearing marking his character. He walks among his men not as a distant authority, but as someone who shares their burdens, who understands the weight they all carry together. His presence is steadying, not because of his title, but because of the quiet strength he radiates. He pauses to speak with a group of engineers examining their siege equipment. His questions are practical, informed, respectful of their expertise. He listens more than he speaks, understanding that leadership often means simply being present, being available, being genuinely interested in the work others are doing. The engineers stand a little straighter, not from fear but from pride. Their emperor trusts them. Their work matters. A messenger arrives from the scouts who've been watching the Germanic positions across the river. The report is delivered quietly, professionally. Marcus Aurelius receives it with the same calm attention he gives to everything, processing the information, considering its implications, preparing to make the decisions that will ripple through thousands of lives. But even as he absorbs the tactical details, part of his mind remains philosophical. This too shall pass. This moment, this challenge, this entire war, all of it temporary against against the vast sweep of time. The thought doesn't diminish his commitment to doing his duty well. If anything, it sharpens his focus. If our time here is brief, then every moment matters. Every decision carries weight. Every interaction is an opportunity to build something meaningful. The morning light continues to strengthen, revealing the full scope of the Roman camp. It's a temporary city, a community of purpose built to last only as long as necessary. But in its organization, its routines, its quiet efficiency, it represents something permanent. The human capacity to create order from chaos, to find meaning in difficulty, to build something larger than ourselves, even when we know it won't last forever. Children from the camp followers run between the tents, their laughter adding a note of joy to the morning sounds. They're too young to fully understand the gravity of their situation, but old enough to sense the strength and purpose of the adults around them. They're learning, without realizing it, what it means to be part of something important. What it means to contribute to a shared endeavor. What it means to find home, not in a place but in a community of people who care for one another. The standards are raised as they are every morning. The golden eagles catching the sunlight, the legion banners unfurling in the gentle breeze. These symbols carry the weight of history, the accumulated courage of all who served before, the promise to all who serve now that their efforts matter, that they're part of something that transcends any individual life. And in this moment, as the sun climbs higher and the day's work begins in earnest, there's something profound happening. Not just in this Roman camp beside the Danube, but in every place where people gather their courage and face uncertainty together. The same spirit that moves these legionnaires to check their equipment and prepare for battle moves you to review your plans and prepare for challenges. The same sense of duty that drives Marcus Aurelius to make difficult decisions drives you to carry the weight of leadership, even when it's heavy, even when you're tired. The dawn doesn't promise that today will be easy. It doesn't guarantee success or safety or the resolution of every problem. But it offers something more valuable, the opportunity to begin again. To take what you've learned from yesterday's struggles and apply it to today's challenges. To be present, to be purposeful, to be part of building something that matters. The light grows stronger, and with it, the quiet determination that has carried humanity through countless dawns, just like this one. Beneath the stars, the light grows stronger, and with it, the quiet determination that has carried humanity through countless dawns, just like this one. But night is not quite finished with us yet. As the sun climbs higher, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, the Roman camp settles into the rhythm of another day. Yet something draws our attention upward, beyond the immediate concerns of breakfast fires and morning duties, beyond even the endless horizon where the barbarian tribes wait in their forests. Tonight, when darkness returns, the soldiers will gather again beneath a canopy older than Rome itself. The stars have been watching this river for millennia before Marcus Aurelius was born, before the first Roman legion crossed the Alps, before the Seven Hills were anything more than shepherds' pastures. They will continue their silent vigil long after the last stone of the Colosseum has crumbled to dust. There is something profoundly comforting in this thought, something that the emperor himself understood as he lay awake in his tent, wrestling with decisions that would affect millions of lives. In his private writings, he often returned to this theme, the vast scale of time and space that renders our daily anxieties both insignificant and, paradoxically, precious. Consider that everything is opinion, he wrote by lamplight, the scratch of his stylus barely audible above the night sounds of the camp. How brief life is, how vast the universe. Tonight, as you lie in your own darkness, carrying the weight of your own responsibilities, perhaps you too can find solace in looking up at these same stars. They are the same points of light that guided ancient merchants along the Silk Road, that sailors used to navigate unknown seas, that lovers gazed upon while making promises they hoped to keep. The Roman soldiers knew this instinctively. After the evening meal, after the watch had been set and the camp secured, small groups would gather in the spaces between tents, not to discuss strategy or complain about their officers, but simply to look up. Gaius, the veteran from the second cohort, would point out the constellations his father had taught him beside their farm in Gaul. The Great Bear wheeling slowly overhead, Orion the hunter standing guard over the southern horizon. The bright star sailors called their guide, steady and unwavering in the north. My grandfather told me, Gaius would say, his weathered face tilted skyward, that when a good man dies, he becomes a star, to help others find their way home. The younger soldiers would listen, some skeptical, others finding comfort in the old stories. But all of them would feel it, that sense of being part of something larger than their individual fears and hopes. The same feeling you might recognize when you step outside on a clear night and look up, forgetting for a moment the emails waiting in your inbox, the meetings scheduled for tomorrow, the 100 small crises that seemed so urgent just hours before. Marcus Aurelius understood this medicine for the soul. He would often leave his tent after midnight when the camp had settled into the deep quiet of the small hours. His guards would follow at a respectful distance as he walked to a slight rise overlooking the river, where the sky opened wide above the water. There, beneath the infinite dome of stars, the most powerful man in the world would remember how small he truly was. We were born to work together, he would remind himself, watching the constellations turn in their ancient dance. Even those who frustrate us, who oppose us, who seem to make our work harder. We are all part of the same vast pattern. This is perhaps the deepest wisdom the Stoics offered. Not that our struggles don't matter, but that they matter in ways we cannot always see. The decision you made last week that keeps you awake at night, the person you had to let go, the opportunity you chose not to pursue, the risk you decided to take. These choices ripple outward like stones thrown into still water, creating patterns that extend far beyond your ability to trace them. The stars remind us of this interconnectedness. The light reaching your eyes tonight began its journey years ago, traveling across unimaginable distances to arrive at precisely this moment. In the same way, the work you're building, the care you're investing, the integrity you're maintaining, these too are traveling toward destinations you may never see. A young soldier named Marcus, not the emperor, but a common legionary from Britannia, would often sit apart from the others during these evening gatherings. He had joined the legions to escape poverty, but found himself carrying a different kind of weight, the weight of wondering whether his life had meaning, whether the sacrifices he was making would amount to anything lasting. One night, as he sat watching the stars reflect in the dark water of the Danube, the old veteran Gaius settled beside him. "You're thinking too much," Gaius observed quietly. "How do you know what I'm thinking?" "Because I've worn that expression. We all have." Gaius gestured toward the other soldiers scattered around the camp, some sleeping, others maintaining the watch. "You're wondering if any of this matters, if you matter." The young man nodded, grateful that someone had named his secret fear. "See that star there?" Gaius pointed to a bright point of light low on the horizon. "My son was born under that star. I wasn't there. I was on campaign in Germania. Missed his first words, his first steps, his first fever. Thought I was failing as a father." He paused, letting the night sounds fill the silence. The gentle lapping of water against the shore, the distant call of a night bird, the soft murmur of guards changing watch. "But when I finally returned home, my boy ran to me like I'd never been away. And I realized I hadn't been absent. Every day I served with honor. Every time I chose duty over comfort. Every moment I held the line so that others could sleep safely. I was teaching him something. Not with words, but with the shape of my life. This is the gift the stars offer to those who carry heavy burdens, perspective that transforms anxiety into purpose. The problems that loom so large in the harsh light of day become manageable when viewed from the vantage point of eternity. Not because they don't matter, but because they matter in the right proportion. Your sleepless nights, your difficult decisions, your moments of doubt, these are not signs of failure. They are signs that you care deeply about doing right by the people who depend on you. The Roman soldiers lying awake in their tents, listening to the night sounds of the frontier, understood this. They were afraid, yes. Homesick, certainly. But they were also part of something larger than their individual comfort. As the night deepens around the Roman camp, as the last conversations fade into silence, and even the guards speak in whispers, the stars continue their patient watch. They have seen empires rise and fall, watched mountains wear down to dust, observed the slow dance of continents across the face of the earth. But they have also witnessed smaller, more intimate moments. A soldier writing a letter home by lamplight, a commander making a decision that will save lives, a young person choosing courage over comfort in a moment when no one else is watching. These moments matter too, perhaps they matter most of all. Marcus Aurelius knew this as he made his final rounds of the camp, checking on sentries, pausing to speak quietly with soldiers who couldn't sleep. The Emperor of Rome, spending his precious hours ensuring that ordinary men felt seen and valued. Not because it was politically advantageous, but because he understood that leadership is ultimately about service, about using whatever power you've been given to help others flourish. "What we do now echoes in eternity," he wrote in his journal that night, the words flowing across the parchment like a prayer. Not because we will be remembered, but because every act of kindness, every moment of integrity, every choice to build rather than destroy, these become part of the great pattern. The stars know this pattern. They have watched it unfold across countless generations in countless forms. The merchant who treats his customers fairly even when no one is watching. The teacher who stays late to help a struggling student. The leader who makes the harder choice because it serves something larger than immediate gain. You are part of this pattern too. The weight you carry, the work you're building, the care you invest in getting things right. These matter not just for their immediate results, but for the way they shape the world, one decision at a time. As you lie in your own darkness tonight, perhaps you can feel this connection. To the Roman soldiers keeping watch beside the Danube, to Marcus Aurelius writing by lamplight in his tent, to all the others across history who have lain awake, wondering if their efforts would prove worthwhile. You are not alone in your vigilance. You are part of an ancient fellowship of those who care enough to lose sleep over doing right. The stars that watched over that Roman camp are the same ones visible from your window tonight, constant in their courses, patient in their light, reminding us that some things endure not because they are permanent, but because they are continually renewed by those who choose to keep faith with what matters most. And in that choosing, in that daily renewal of purpose and care, you find not the answer to every question that keeps you awake, but something better. The peace that comes from knowing you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you were meant to do, beneath the same vast sky that has sheltered every generation of builders and dreamers and guardians who came before and will shelter those who come after. Each of them carrying their own precious weight, each of them part of the same endless, beautiful, unfolding story written in starlight across the darkness of a world that needs their care.